Good morning. Wow, great. I love that enthusiasm. This weekend is always very special to me. Having the mayor here always makes me feel like spring is right around the corner. Welcome, everybody, to All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church here in Kansas City. And for those of you who walked in, ambled in, Ubered in, wheeled in, you are welcome here. Do we have any visitors that would like to say hi? Romalie? Wonderful. Welcome. Welcome. Is there anybody else here visiting or for the first time? Please stand up and say hi.
Hi, I am Sam, just visiting Kansas City from Emeritus, the church in Palo Alto, California.
Well, welcome. Definitely. Is there anybody else? Well, I tell you what, Romalie, your friends and sir, we're doing a very nice lunch. They've put a great deal of effort into it, and we have an up-and-coming young OWL support team that is really great at helping out. Visitors are always welcome to enjoy some really good cooking for free. Just let them know you're a visitor, you bet, and we'd love to have you. We are really lucky today that we've done a switch. Our intern, Jack Gady, has gone to Lincoln, Nebraska, and we're very blessed that Reverend Fritz Hudson is here as well. Reverend Hudson currently serves as the Minister Emeritus of the Unitarian Church of Lincoln, Nebraska, and as community service attorney in the immigration and juvenile courts there. His 40-year career has also been expressed in the ministry to UU congregations and community legal service in Minnesota, Connecticut, Arizona, Iowa, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. Thank you.
My spirit has passed in compassion and determination around this whole world. I see cities of the earth, and I make myself at random a part of them. I see ranks and colors and barbarisms and civilizations. I go among them. I mix indiscriminately, and I salute all inhabitants of this earth. I greet you with the words of Walt Whitman, American poet of the 19th century, and this, his poem, Salut au monde. And now I invite Sierra to please light our chalice and read our words of covenant as Unitarian Universalists.
Good morning. My name is Sierra, and I light this chalice for the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all.
Wow, that's lit. It's ready. Now, please, would you join me in the words of covenant of this congregation? Goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another And now let's join together in the song, Do You Hear? And as we get to the third verse, that's the last verse, I would invite children to come forward so we can have a talk right up here in front. Do you hear? Thank you. Thank you for coming right up there. Good to see you all. Perhaps you heard I am Fritz, and I am a minister from up north, where I think it's maybe snowing today. But we're all here together in church, and I'm wondering if you can tell me why. Why do we come to church? Anybody got an answer to that question? Why we come to church? Go ahead, give me an answer. Go ahead.
Because we would like to.
Because we would like to. What would you like? What part of it do you like? Anybody like anything here that they're here for? Go ahead. What are you here for? You're talking? Yes.
Oh. Friends.
For friends. I'm ready.
Snacks here.
Snacks? I'm for that. Snacks, and we like to come, and we've got friends. Let me tell you one other reason that we might come to church. The one I think about. I think we go to church to learn something. We come to learn how to pay attention. We come to learn how to pay attention to what's going on all around us, to watch and to listen and to learn about the world. And we do that so that when we leave here, we can make good decisions about what to do in the world beyond these walls. So I'm going to ask right off whether you've been paying attention. I'm going to ask whether you were paying attention to the two things I think are most important that we do when we get here. The first thing is we light our chalice, and Sierra read wonderful words that I wonder if you were paying attention to. Can anybody repeat any of the words that Sierra, besides Sierra, you can't do that for a moment. Anyone repeat any of the words that Sierra said to us as she lit the chalice? I'm Sierra. That's the first thing she said, wasn't it? You were paying attention. You did very, very well. Perfect. Perfect. But I bet someone else now has the hard part, right? What do you think she said after that?
Well, she said
liberty and justice for all. You got it. You got it. Anybody else hear any words in there? Go ahead.
And I light this chalice.
And I light this chalice for. That's good. Anything else?
She said good morning.
And she said good morning. You guys are cheating on me, aren't you? You're kind of hanging back. Anybody hear any other words?
Hello.
Hello? All right, I'm going to tell you what she said. Or maybe Sierra can tell me again. Do you remember what you said? We light this chalice for? You were reading, weren't you? That's all right. You're allowed to read. World community of liberty and justice for all. And peace as well. All right? That's the first thing I think we should be paying attention to. That's why I repeat it. In fact, I'm going to say it in different ways, so maybe you have a way of remembering it. This is something we covenant to do That means we agree, all of us here, we agree to speak and to act so that everyone in the world, that world community, can be good neighbors to one another, being in a community, in peace, not hurting each other, in liberty, that's letting each other choose our lives, and in justice, being fair to one another. Now, there was a second thing I think just as important to pay attention to, and it's what we sang. So can anybody remember any of the words that we just sang? Go ahead.
Did you hear?
Do you hear? Do you hear what? Did you hear any of the things that we're asked to do you hear? I'll tell you a couple of them because I think they are important. There's a picture here that I think would help us do that if I get some help from back there. That's the picture of the world community. And that's the picture then is what you're hearing, right? So let me tell you about what you hear. Through the sky to the land, in the sun and the rain, hear the cry, hear the sigh, all the dares, all the prayers, they are yours, mine, and theirs. Do you hear? So think with me about when you cry or when you sigh. Think about everybody all over the world when they make dares or when they make prayers. And look at this next picture. And tell me what these folks are doing. They're walking, aren't they? Look at them. Are they all old people or all young people? No, they're mixed ages, huh? And are they just kind of walking and strolling along, or they got something that they're carrying? They're carrying on their heads, they're carrying on their backs, they're carrying in their arms. So maybe these folks aren't just out for a walk. What do you think that they might be doing? Yeah.
Going on a hike.
They could be going on a hike, that's true. What about if they're going on a hike that they're not going to come back from? What if they're moving? What if they're changing places? Has anybody ever moved? Anybody moved? Several of us. Anybody ever changed countries? Anybody ever live outside the United States? What country did you come from?
I came from Syracuse, except we moved to Jakarta.
Jakarta. That's a long way away. I know. I moved too. I moved from Africa to here, and from here back to Africa. Those are long moves, and they're not easy. Those are the kind of things that make people sigh and make people dare and make people pray. And those are the kind of people that on days that are not Sunday, I work with. I'm a lawyer Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Lawyers know about rules. And I want to tell you that I work with people that have come all the way to our country from someplace else. And then I have to tell them about the rules, about whether they can stay here. And I want to tell you that those rules are hard for me to say, because our rules and our laws for coming to our country, they do not let everyone choose whether to be here or not. They do not promote liberty, and they are not fair to everybody. Some people get to stay, and some people are told to go back home, so they don't promote justice. I want to show you another picture. Look at that picture very carefully. Two people with just legs, but look down, first of all, on that side. What's all along the side there? Kind of a fence, right? Because they can't go out from where they're standing. And look on their ankle. Do you see what's on their ankle? It's kind of like a little box, right? Let me tell you about that box. That box sends out a signal, like a radio would send out a signal. It goes only to one place, though. It goes to the border police's office, because they have to wear those black boxes so the police know where they are at all times, unless, in case they want to tell them, I'm sorry, you can't stay. Now, I just was talking to two people just like those two people just last week. Their names are Melita and Alfredo. They're bigger, but they've got kids named Daniel and Isabel. And they told me about their hard move to our country, and they told me about the hurt from which they came, and they told me about how they prayed to live in this country, and they told me how these black boxes make them feel. And I hear them, and I pay attention. And when I hear people tell me those stories, I look at them, and I always begin with saying 2 words. Most of the people I talk to speak Spanish. Who speaks Spanish here? Who speaks Spanish here? At least 2 words. 2 words. The 2 words I always say to people who talk to me about their move: lo siento. Lo siento. It means I'm sorry. It means I'm sorry, it's not easy, that it's so hard, that our rules are such that it's hard for you to come here. And then I try to help them. I try to help them if I can, so that they can become a good neighbor here, that they can come here in peace, that they can have fairness in their lives, because that's what I think about when I'm here, and I hope we all will try to do as we go out. You're going to go out now into your classes, so let's join in our children's song. Thank you for listening, for paying attention.
I am here to give you an invitation to the offering, which this whole month, part of it is to go to our partner church in Nyarad Galfalva, which is in Romania, Transylvania. Transylvania being the part that's mostly Hungarian-speaking, and our Unitarian co-parishioners are Hungarian-speaking. All Souls has sent 4 official pilgrimage groups to our partner church of Nyarad Galfalva. Often we just say Galfalva because Nyarad means that it's on the Nyarad River. In the Hungarian-speaking area of Romania known as Transylvania. We were among the first UU congregations to reestablish relations with this heartland of Unitarianism after the revolution that threw out the communist dictatorship of Ceausescu. And that's another whole story. During these over 25 years, we have sent 4 groups to Galfalva, a total of 35 members. Ken Yeager, who gave this invitation 2 weeks ago, holds the record for number of visits since he's been going over to visit his daughter's family in Prague just about every fall. And he goes on to visit our partner church. I've visited 5 times, including 3 months in the spring of 1996 when Roxy White-Jones, who's here someplace, and I spent 3 months, March through May, in Galfalva, living with the minister's family and getting to know the village and its people better. As a consequence of these many visits, I will have to say friends in Galfalva and the surrounding area. There are about 700 people living in Galfalva. 206 are members of the Unitarian Church. On January 6th of this year, Kendall's Children's Focus told of the founding of Unitarianism by Reverend Francis David, and her sermon emphasized the Edict of Torda 450 years ago in January of 1568. Now get this, it was the first proclamation in Western culture of freedom of religion. It was promulgated by the only Unitarian king ever, John Sigismund, who was converted by Francis David. And let me say that again. It was the first proclamation of freedom of religion. And the Unitarian Church has held on to that ever since. That's one of our, and unfortunately, freedom of religion is still under siege. Our Golf Alva Church was built in 1757, about 200 years later. The Golf Alva Church is very lucky to have as its minister Jakob Haas Bela, or as we would say, Bela Jakob Haas. And Bela is the same name as Bela Bartok, who was also Unitarian. Bela is one of 15 young Unitarian Transylvanian ministers who have spent a year in the United States at Star King Seminary studying theology in English. So you know that he's maybe more competent in English than some of us, at least in theological terms. Since our first pilgrimage in 1991, our congregation has sent a yearly donation of about $1,200, half to be spent for the support of the minister, who only gets, he gets a little, $6,000 a year. No, he gets $2,500 a year from the government. And $2,000 from the Unitarian Bishop's office, and about $1,500 from his congregation, who are, to put it mildly, not well-to-do. The $1,200 that we send is about 1/6 of their total church budget. And they have used the money that we send for part of it's for his salary and part of it is for the use of the church at his discretion. And they saved that money up for quite a while, and they were able to do a lot of renovation of the church. You may get the impression from from the various ones who have spoken, that this is that we're giving money because we're so rich and they're so poor and they're a poor downtrodden people. On the contrary, they are a very proud people. They're proud of their church and of the Hungarian language and culture. And there is much good food, if you go, good food, good spirits, and most of all, and one must also say good brandy. So, and we get a way to understand people of other countries, get to know them on more than just watching a video of poor people in wherever. And we get a way to feel more international about our religion and how to see people in other countries practice the UU faith. So give generously.
Please join me in the words of dedication for the offering. We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create a just and compassionate society.
Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here, at our sea-washed sunset gates, shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Send these, the homeless, tempest-torn, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.
Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? Would you harbor a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, a heretic, convict, or spy? Would you harbor a runaway woman or child, a poet, a prophet, a king? Would you harbor an exile or a refugee, a person living with AIDS? Would you harbor a Tubman, a Garrett, a Truth, a fugitive, or a slave? Would you harbor a Haitian, Korean, or Czech, a lesbian, or a gay? Would you harbor a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, a heretic, convict, or spy? Would you harbor a runaway woman or child, a poet, a prophet, a king? Would you harbor an exile or a refugee, a person living with AIDS? Would you harbor a Tubman, a Garrett, a Truth, a fugitive, or a slave? Would you harbor a Haitian, Korean, or Czech, a lesbian, or a gay? Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? Would I harbor you? Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you?
So just to see where we are starting from, let me ask a question. Issei Barnwell, the composer of this song, is the leader of the vocal ensemble group Sweet Honey in the Rock. How many of us have heard them? Wonderful. I'm glad to see it. I hope you'll take every chance. You know, of course, that Issei is perhaps the best-known member of All Souls Unitarian Church of Washington, D.C. And in her song, she names many whom we could harbor here. So I'm going to ask you, if you are here, are harbored here, and you feel welcome, you feel comfortable, would you let us know by raising your hand if you're a Christian, a Muslim, or a Jew, for example? Or perhaps a heretic? I thought that might get a few hands. Or a convict? Or a spy? Anyone? Wouldn't be a spy, right? A lesbian or a gay, maybe. Several of us. A person living with AIDS. A runaway woman, perhaps. A poet, a prophet, a king. All the kings from Kansas City went to Sacramento, I think, quite a number of years ago. So maybe we're short a king or two. But we're doing all right at harboring some people here. Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? Those are very you questions, I hope you'll agree. And given our covenant to affirm and promote the worth of every person, to affirm and promote compassion in human relations, to affirm and promote world community, that may be the big you question. Would you harbor me? I'm hoping that this morning you will consider with me whether it could also be the big question for the United States of America in this year, in 2018. Is our answer to would you harbor me the essence of any answer to the question, who are we as a nation now? Karl Barth, a mid-20th century German theologian, reportedly told his students, preach with the Bible in one hand and the morning newspaper in the other. In UU terms, there probably has rarely been a Sunday when our scripture, our covenant, has been more engaged by our newspapers' headlines than they are today. When I looked yesterday morning, the lead headline in the Kansas City Star on their website read, U.S. government shuts down. And the story, a bit further down, read, Democrats balk in an effort to pressure the White House to protect dreamer immigrants. Our entire shared enterprise as a nation this weekend, and who knows how much longer, is at a standstill because we can't agree on how to answer the question, will you harbor me? Can you or I do anything now to help our neighbors, our leaders, to reach an answer that's consonant with our covenant? I wonder. And I ask you to wonder with me, to pay attention to this question with me for this time that we have agreed to share this morning. I'm going to build up to the question, who are we as a nation, kind of by steps. The first step is to give a brief answer to a basic question that you could easily have, who am I? And as a second step up, I'm going to essay an answer to a question you should have, which is, who are you as All Souls Church? And then I'll say what I can about who we have been as a harboring nation. And then finally, I'll suggest who we could be as a harboring nation and how we UU churches might help make us that harboring nation. Sounds like a plan for the morning? that's how we're going. So who am I? Well, for starters, I guess I should ask if any of you think you might have seen me before here or anyplace else in your life. Yeah, about 5 or 6 or maybe 8 if you think hard on it. In fact, I have been coming here to this place every once in a while for about 34 years. Before then, the earliest of my 50 years as a Unitarian Universalist, I was just kind of in this church's larger orbit. I entered our faith as a college student, attending People's UU Church in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, up north a bit from here. And then I went east from there to divinity school and to law school, and then into the Peace Corps in Africa, in a whole country. No, Mr. President. My first time actually here at All Souls came in 1984 when, as a newly arrived UU minister in Iowa City, Iowa, I became chapter colleague to your minister then, Judith Walker Riggs. How many date from Judith's time here? Oh, a little more than remember me. That's encouraging. You remember Judith. She's quite memorable to those who don't know her. And then all of the ministers you have had since, John Weston and Jim Eller, and now Judith and Kendall, and in fact, your interim ministers as well. Each of them have been quite important partners in shared ministry with me, even more so when I moved to serve our Lincoln Unitarian Church. Over the years, I have attended many conferences and ceremonies here. I've led workshops and retreats here, and I have preached from this pulpit. But does all of that mean that I know you? Well, let's see. One thing I know about you is that this year you will celebrate your 150th anniversary as a congregation. I hope that makes you smile like it makes me smile. Church's founding anniversaries for me and my congregations have always created powerful connections with our core identity and our driving mission across all of our generations. I urge you to seize and celebrate your 150th for this power. And I wonder now, on this Sunday, if you might even engage that power as my most recent congregation did. 2 years ago, as my final full-time congregational undertaking, I became interim minister at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Rochester, Minnesota. A significant attraction for me in going there was that they were going to be celebrating their 150th anniversary in my first year with them. And that fall, one of our most powerful services was called Now Let Us Sing. And in it, we told stories of the church's past, and we sang the songs most loved from the period of each of those stories. And many told me afterwards just how grounding and how energizing the service had been for them. But for one of us there, it was not so. She asked me for an appointment that week to follow to tell me why. She said that she'd come to that service already moved, actually seared internally by stories of that present day, stories related in her newspaper, stories transmitted by her television. The stories on that day told of Belgians locked in their houses, hoping that the police would say that the murderous attacks on the crowds at their airports and at their central metro station had ended. Stories also that told of Syrians huddled month after month, sickened in squalid refugee camps, dying in futile flight from their war-torn country, while nations such as ours blustered and cowered in fear. And she came to church that Sunday, she said, hoping for help, as she tried to really pay attention to those horrific, all-too-present realities in our world. And she got there and found her spiritual community singing and reveling in what to her felt like nostalgic isolation, untouched by the world beyond our safe walls, paying no attention to its pain at all. And she asked me, what would our spiritual ancestors have done in our world? Would they not, could we not do better somehow for someone besides ourselves. So I wonder if there might be someone here among you at All Souls who might bring exactly that same question to your congregation as you celebrate your 150th anniversary. If I know you, I know you're there. In Rochester, just 2 Sundays later, our service was called Will You Harbor Me? And our first answer was to draw on our past success as reaching out to people in fear. We revived a refugee resettlement task force that had last been active to help Bosnians in the 1980s. And we partnered with our area's Catholic social services to support Syrian refugees as our government finally admitted some of them, at least, to our country. And then a year later came our decision as a nation, through the electoral process ordained by our Constitution, to elect as the custodian of the American dream a president who implored us to pay attention to America first. And immediately upon taking office, those paying attention have seen him recreating who we are as a people fearing that any stranger is here to do us harm. His vision of our nation is that we turn away all who would come to pursue the American dream, the dream that brought almost all of our ancestors here, the dream of choosing, of making our own lives, of following rules fair to all, in peace, in community. So how did we in Rochester respond to this nightmare presidency? How might you respond here? Well, I'll tell you in a moment, but first let me remind you of who we have been as a nation when we've been asked the question, will you harbor me? The new Colossus, the poem that Ruth just read so well, is known, of course, to us all. Emma Lazarus wrote it in 1883 as part of the campaign to build the pediment in New York Harbor on which was to be erected the Statue of Liberty. Since 1903, her words have graced that pediment in print in a large plaque. Her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Send these tempests tossed to me. Our nation's welcome, though, in our past acts is nowhere near as clear and clarion as Emma Lazarus' words. A scant decade after our Constitution was adopted in 1798, our Congress began restricting immigration to our country, first barring entrance to groups of people that it thought were dangerous to our society, to our welfare, to our identity. It began by excluding those deemed dangerous to the government. In the next century, even as Emma Lazarus' words were being immortalized, it added convicts and prostitutes and those likely to become public charges to the aliens who were excluded. Following World War I, Congress set an annual ceiling on the total number of immigrants and limited the percent from any one country to the percent of those already citizens who'd been counted in the last census. Following World War II, Congress set preferences to admit aliens with special skills. Only in the 1960s can we say that the wind driving our immigration laws began to change direction. Only then did they begin to further rather than to fight the spirit of Emma Lazarus' proud proclamation. In 1965, Congress eliminated all racial quotas. In 1980, Congress adopted the United Nations standard for admitting refugees. Since then, though, Congress's winds opening our doors have been largely stilled. Only slight breezes have widened or narrowed our doors by small degrees, according to our president's interpretation and administration of Congress's controls. I suppose one might say in many ways that our last election sucked. But in immigration, there's no question but that a strong sucking wind has been pulling our nation's doors to close. Muslims have been branded all as terrorists. Latin Americans have been branded as murderers and rapists all. Refugees who've been given shelter from past natural disasters have been told, time's up, gotta go now. Young people brought here by parents to pursue their American dream, protected from deportation by our prior president. Our current president now tells this country, the only one you've ever known, only wants you if we can build a wall to keep any like you from ever entering again. And finally, this weekend, as God would have it, half of our Congress has told the other half of our Congress, the doors can close no further. We're stopping business as usual across the board until the wind changes. So what did we do in Rochester after the election? Well, in partnership with 3 other UU congregations in our state and with 3 Christian congregations in our city, we moved very deliberately, very openly through an education and discernment process on immigration realities and options in response. And it resulted last summer in a broad congregational vote to declare the church to be a sanctuary from deportation. My successor, the Reverend Luke Stevens Royer, fit his shoulders fully into the harness that I left him, and the congregation has moved to act. They've installed a shower. They've created a living space. Their actions now proclaim our covenant to the community as a whole. While you're reading newspapers, you might take in the winter edition of our Faiths magazine, the UU World. Elaine McCardle has an article there which will tell you of UU churches in Texas and Ohio and Colorado and elsewhere who've taken that same path to declare themselves sanctuary and are housing people now. Should that be your path? Well, I need to quickly say that offering sanctuary is not the only way, or perhaps even the most effective way, for you at All Souls to act on our covenant in these times as a harboring church. Kendall and I have talked about your options. She has some very good ideas, and I'm here merely to encourage you to ask her about them and to speak with one another about your possibilities in the same deliberate way we did in Rochester. And if you want more input, I ask you to read Elaine McCardle's other article in the Winter UU World about becoming engaged as individuals in the UU College of Social Justice support for Central American refugees being detained in Texas. Or read our national newspapers and magazines as they unearth the horrific stories of the effect of closing our doors. I wonder who among us may be readers of the New Yorker magazine. If you're not, pick up this week's issue. I commend to you the piece by Sarah Stillman, When Deportation is a Death Sentence. Its stories could very well be the story of my clients, Melita and Alfredo, and their children, Daniel and Isabel. Stillman's research with a dozen graduate students at Columbia's Journalism School unearthed 60 cases of U.S. asylum seekers whose deportation brought them death or at least great harm in their home country. Alfredo, my client, came to our country only after both he and his sister were shot multiple times by the gangs that rule their hometown in El Salvador. Gangs sometimes doing that with police support. Stillman's research discovered that in the early Trump administration, the percentage of asylum seekers who were granted parole has plummeted. In one New York facility, 50% were granted parole immediately before the Trump inauguration. In the months after, it's been 12%. She also discovered that even in the Obama administration, the fate of an asylum seeker in court differs greatly depending upon the court's locale. The U.S. Government Accountability Office, its own records show that between 2007 and 2014, in New York City, 60% of asylum applicants won their cases. In that same period, in the Omaha, Nebraska court, less than 5% won. And that's my court. That's my call to change how the wind is blowing. I don't know what yours is. I hope you'll talk about it. I won't ask which of you are readers of the All Souls Church newsletter, but if you are, you would know that my takeoff point for considering what I might say here this morning before the newspapers took over for me was a book written 14 years ago by Harvard historian Samuel Huntington. Its title was Who Are We? The Challenges to Americans' National Identity. Alarmed by the winds that were then opening our nation's doors, Huntington cried out that America cannot become the world and still be America. And he concluded that in a world where religion shapes people's allegiances and alliances and antagonisms on every continent, it shouldn't be surprising if Americans return again to religion to find our national identity and our national purpose. Well, of course, Huntington was writing then when Christian evangelicals seemed to speak for all the energetic religion of our country. And the gospel they preached then was indeed one of exclusivism. But I am pleased to say that in our second decade now, almost to the end of that second decade in this century, I've seen Christian liberalism and liberalism such as ours, rooted in traditions rather newer to our soil, rediscovering our capacities for leadership for our nation's soul. And even more importantly, perhaps, I have seen Christian evangelicals becoming more inclined to a spirit of openness to a world, a spirit rooted in their very own scripture. Their Bible, the Hebrew Bible, in its most ancient book of laws, Leviticus chapter 19, verse 33, has always instructed any who would pay attention. When a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself, for you yourself were foreigners in Egypt. Christians are now paying more attention to that law, and we can join them. Our home newspaper in Lincoln, the Journal-Star, this past Monday, ran an editorial cartoon first published by Rick McKee in the Augusta, Georgia Chronicle. And it shows our president, robed, standing on Lady Liberty's pedestal, holding up in his right hand not a torch, but a stop sign, and cradling in his left arm a tablet that reads, "Go away." And a man and a woman, little down at the state statue's base, read the inscription there. It says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses from places like Norway, not from those whole countries." The Washington Post that very same day ran a column by Michael Gerson. Its headline was this: "Trump has revealed who he is. Now it's our turn." So it is, Americans. So it is, Unitarian Universalists. So it is All Souls Church. Our turn. Will you pay attention? Will you act? I invite us to rise as we are able and join in singing the English of song number 1027. I guess most of us will see it on the screen. It is originally in Spanish, Cuando el Pobre, and I don't know that we got the Spanish onto the screen, but we did. So we're going to sing 1 and 2 in English, and then all of us are going to give it our best shot to do the fourth verse in Spanish, and then we'll come back and get real confident with the last verse in English again, okay? So, Cuando el Pobre. We part now with the words of the 13th century Persian poet Saadi from his work Bostan. To worship God is nothing other than to serve the people. It does not need rosaries or prayer carpets or robes. All people are members of the same body, created from one essence. If fate brings suffering to one member, the others cannot stay at rest.